As we've promised you every single Wednesday night, we bring you an interesting individual from inside the interwebs that comes all the way out to talk to you. These people are deep into cryptocurrency. I call them crypto lifers. They also have great, just life advice, positive attitudes, and just interesting outlooks on, their takes and point of views. So I love having them on the show. This is someone you may have seen before. He's been on the show before, and I've also shared the screen with him back when I first started coming out on YouTube. My man, Rice, RiceTV. How you been, man? How's everything? Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
I greatly appreciate it, man. I always look forward to our conversation, Sam, and appreciate you inviting me on. And I definitely want to also mention that you've been on my channel as well as I've been on yours. So if people want to check that out over on my end, I definitely encourage them to do so. I might even send you a link if you want to throw it in a video description.
Yeah, we will for sure. It'll be down there. Check him out on YouTube. He always streams live, makes content. And he also has 2 channels, right? I still think you do. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's confusing. So you said RiceTVx and you're right. But so on the YouTube side, I was originally Rice Crypto when I started my channel January 2018.
Okay.
It was mid 2020. I started restructuring my channel into 2020, rebranded from Rice Crypto to RiceTVx. Well, since all that, I've had to remove the restructured version of the channel, which was adding in the stranger than fiction content, which was kind of going down fringe topics, rabbit holes of some conspiracy theories, spirituality, history, law, and all that. So I had to remove that from RiceTVx YouTube channel and start a new channel, which is Rice Against the Grain. Well, since what was RiceTVx is now focusing on crypto and economics, back to basics, I rebranding on the YouTube side back to Rice Crypto for the channel. Now, so what's crazy is if you go to my YouTube channels, it'll say Rice Crypto and in brackets RiceTVx. If you go to the other one, Rice Against the Grain, in brackets RiceTVx. If you go to my Odyssey, Rumble, and BitChute channels, it says RiceTVx and in brackets Rice Crypto and Rice Against the Grain. The reason is because I can have it all on those platforms without having to worry about the censorship and worrying about those controversial videos causing a problem to the crypto content. But I had to separate it on YouTube. So long story short, Rice Crypto is back on the YouTube and Rice Against the Grain. Those are my 2 YouTube channels. You could find all that information at RiceTVx, ricecrypto.com, ricetvx.com, riceagainstthegrain.com, riceuncensored.com, and it'll take you all pretty much to the same place.
Amazing. We'll put all the links below. Just send me everything, and I'll copy paste them right in from my.
Yeah, I'll just give you the one of the 4. They all go to the same place. But
well, speaking of controversy, right? Right now we're in the midst of the SBF trial, right? And some people are saying, is he going to get 30 years, 50 years, or 100 years? And I just wanted to ask your take on this. How many years do you think he gets? Does he squeak out? Is there some way that he claims naivety here? And, what's your take on the whole inside rabbit hole of the SBF trial?
I've been trying to follow it as much as possible. I know Caroline Ellison, I think she testified yesterday and maybe portions of the day before, if I'm not mistaken. SBF hasn't taken the stand. I think Gary Wong has taken the stand. I think he was one of the first, which he really apparently revealed a lot of information, discrepancies. Caroline kind of put the blame on SBF. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he padded the pockets of so many politicians, of so many individuals, that I think it'll pay off for him. I think he'll end up getting a long sentence, but it'll probably be the lesser of the evils. I don't think he's going to get a life term. I don't think he's going to see, he's never going to see the light of day. And then who knows with technologies, he may be able to live forever when he gets out. Who knows?
Amazing.
But it's interesting to follow. I would love to see the book be thrown at him. If I'm not mistaken, when it came to the donations to the politicians, I think the charges in regards to that were dropped.
Is he a bloodthirsty evil monger, or is he a naive kid who got caught up in the mix?
I think it's a combination of the 2.
Interesting.
Maybe a monster in the.
Was it the pills? Was it?
I don't know. He had some interesting parents and some interesting people in his life. So I would imagine that some of those individuals had something to do with it, because there's not a young guy like that doesn't usually have aspirations to give all your money from a philanthropic point of view to politicians for lobbying. So I think there's a little bit more of a strategist
handhold.
behind it,
Someone's
more of a
holding his hand.
puppet master. And I would look at SBF as more of a puppet.
That's how it is. Now we're seeing, some news today was interesting is 9 billion in Tether sitting in crypto exchanges, the highest level in 7 months. Are people waiting? What's going on? Are you cash heavy? Do you think we're getting a big drop soon? How do you play Bitcoin? Are you a long-term buyer? Do you like to grab it on the lows? What's your take on this move coming up?
I'm long-term bullish, but I'm short-term bearish. I still feel like we have lower to go. I'm not a technical analysis person, so I can't really point to a price range. I was one of the people that were thinking that we were going to see sub 15.5, but the more closer that we get to the halving and the possibility of the spot Bitcoin ETF passing, those chances seem to become less and less. But I do see us kind of going downward, and I am looking to accumulate where I didn't accumulate when we were sub 20 for a minute last year. I was really surprised by the price action. We have definitely some interesting things at play. I think the combination of the ETF and the halving is going to play into some very pivotal things. It's also going to be very important to see like where we're headed as far as a nation and as a world when it comes to the economic climate, whether or not, because it does look like all signs are pointing to recession. But when you look at the numbers actually stagger compared to make the Great Depression back in the 30s look bad. I mean, look something good. So the numbers are comparison to a Great Depression. And so I'm not sure how Bitcoin is going to perform. I've heard a lot of really interesting theories of a commodity bull run taking place, like with your gold, silvers, and your precious metals. And people are looking, especially now that the ETF is being talked about, Bitcoin as being a digital commodity and would be included in that run. So it would be interesting if we did see like a commodities bull run take place because of everything else that's happening. And then on the tail end of that, then you had the ETF, then you have the halving and all these things coming into play. So it's kind of uncertain territory as far as where we are economically, but from a traditional 4-year cycle standpoint, we seem to be kind of on point where we should be.
What I'm looking at is, the bond market has basically just kind of collapsed in a way, right? Like there's nowhere, like there's no reason we should be getting more money on the 2-year than the 10-year. And whenever we've seen that before, we've seen prices starting to fall. Yet this is the first time in history that we're seeing this happen to the bond market, yet prices are continuing to go up, and I feel like they have to keep printing money. I feel like we're at that stage where they're just like, too many politicians won their elections. They said they were going to do too many things. They vote for deficit spending 45 more days, and then they have to band-aid it again or shut down the government. I just feel like the money printer is going to go on. And with the halving coming on, I think we're going to get one more absorption until we realize that the whole economy has to make some type of bigger shift. But you never know. You never know.
No, you made some good points. When you talked about the inverted yield curve, so the inverted yield curve, I think 99% of the time, I think it's just, I think it's almost 100% accurate. It may be off by one time of an inversion, if I'm not mistaken. But the way that these inversions work, you have an initial inversion, which usually people are looking at the 2 and 10. And obviously, the longer time that you have, the more interest you should get back.
Amen.
But the 2 years were yielding more return than the 10 years. That's the inversion.
Yep.
Well, we've seen it recently re-invert. So when it does this, because now that you can see the 10-year bond rate is just spiked up, that is the signal of a recession. The first inversion is recession coming. The second inversion is signal recession is here.
Interesting.
So that's what's going to be interesting to find how all this plays out. I mean, I've seen some really interesting theories when it comes to the bond market because of the value of the dollar. With what's going on with the dollar and buying back bonds from a government standpoint, I believe it makes it cheaper for them to buy back these bonds than it would be otherwise. So there's a lot of strategy that's going on, and the dollar strengthening is also a very worrisome thing for the rest of the world, especially Forex currencies. We could see an agreement that took place. I can't remember the name of the agreement, but inflation had gotten and I want to say that this might have been in the 80s, but inflation had gotten so bad that it was really affecting foreign currencies to the point that America had to step in and just basically cut their own inflation level down. I don't know how all this happened. I don't know how to explain it from an economic standpoint, but it was basically taking the strength out of the dollar so that it would not affect the rest of the world. And that's kind of where we're at now. What are your thoughts, looking at charts with the DXY?
I look at it every day, right? And, so I kind of like battle the back and forth. It's just, the charts tell me that it has to take a move down. The 3 day is just too overbought. There's bearish divergences, When it hit 107, I said it has to pull back. And it did. It decided to pull back. Funny is, we didn't get the pump with Bitcoin when it pulled back. It's like you wait for this pullback. You wait for this pullback. You're like, all right, when it pulls back, Bitcoin should get a bump. And it's funny, then Bitcoin and the dollar both kind of go down. I tell everyone,
Bitcoin wasn't going down when the DXY was going up either, which is normally the correlation too. So then maybe we're starting to end that correlation.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like they're like, I always say this saying, like I've been at a stoplight before and there's two cars with blinkers and they're kind of off, but at one point they blink together. And I think that's kind of how it is with assets. And I think that's why a lot of people in TradFi get confused, because like they'll take a weekly chart and they'll put Bitcoin on NASDAQ and it will match for 3 to 4 years. So they'll be convinced that they're the same asset, right? But yet they've never really studied Bitcoin in a halving, or I really think people need to get some exposure to BTC. Because like once you get exposure to Bitcoin, you don't look at it the same way. Like even if you have $1,000 of it, it becomes, you know what I mean? Don't you agree? Like you start to kind of,
I agree, but other people don't. So like the ETF is going to bring more people in.
That's what we
because of the safety that the ETF is going to offer that Bitcoin itself doesn't offer. And the ETF is supposed to be back 1 for 1. And then the other thing is, if you haven't seen my interview with the guy, his YouTube channel is called British Auto.
Okay.
You should check the interview out and check out his channel, because he's got some really interesting theories about the way he looks at things with this ETF. And he's talking about because right now banks in the United States and other parts of the world, they can custody crypto, but it's not the easiest thing for banks to do. And when it comes to like collateralizing crypto for loans, which I think is going to become a big thing, it's not exactly super easy. So it would be easier for the TradFi, the legacy system, to utilize ETFs in place of the actual Bitcoin when the ETF is backed by the actual Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So, but what this allows for, in addition to collateralized lending and such, is a huge credit expansion when it comes to the monetary system and the banking system. So where the banks right now are kind of underwater because of the bonds that were the treasuries, because of the way that the interest rates and how the returns have taken place and gone down, something that should have been a safe bet wasn't playing out to be a safe bet. And now you see in Congress pushing Gary Gensler to get this spot ETF passed, and knowing that it will actually, in a sense, allow for a little bit of, it'll come in and save the banks in a way, because it will allow for that credit expansion that will take the pressure off the money losses that they've gotten from the treasury markets, where they can profit off of the ETF and money expansion, credit expansion, financialization of Bitcoin, which is not something I want to throw up in my mouth saying it, because I don't like the fact that the TradFi system is doing this, but it's a sad fact. It's a reality and it's happening. So I have to embrace these things and be aware of what is coming. Now, does that mean I'm going to not hold physical Bitcoin and I want an ETF? Absolutely not. I'm always going to hold my own Bitcoin, and I'm always going to have my private keys.
I like it. Do you run a node?
No, I don't. But there's really no benefit to running a node unless you're a miner. It's just a waste of electricity.
Amen.
It's just you saying, "Oh, I run a node." Cool.
Yeah, exactly. You just want that's why. It brings us to the topic I wanted to bring up is JP Morgan, right? Debuting tokenized BlackRock shares as collateral, right? It's a big deal, right? They're finally figured out, and they built their own blockchain Onyx on the Ethereum blockchain, right? So, they saw blockchain, they studied it, and now they're using it. What's your take on that? Is that just fine? It's just the blockchain. Do you think that helps overall crypto space at all? Or is that more just like we're saying, just a bigger hand of TradFi, just kind of getting more of what they want and just, subversing the rest of the cryptos that we want?
I'm trying to think of the name of the layer 1 blockchain that came off of a fork of what the JP Morgan blockchain was. It's a project that competes with Ethereum and Cardano such.
Kadena, right?
Kadena,
Yeah.
Kadena. I was trying to think of the name of it. So the team from Kadena, they basically, from the way I understand it, back in like 2017, 2018, started working with JP Morgan to develop a private blockchain, which was Ethereum compatible with the EVM. And Kadena was basically taking the JP Morgan blockchain that they created and forking it, not a hard fork, but a soft fork, code fork, and making some changes. But that's basically what JP Morgan. So JP Morgan has been what I'm getting at is JP Morgan has been involved in when it comes to tokenizing things, utilizing blockchain technology, having a JP Morgan token. They've been involved in this for quite some time, even though Jamie Dimon has been, I like to call him Jamie Demon, but when he was publicly speaking negatively about Bitcoin, they were still utilizing these technologies. JP Morgan is a partner in the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, which is the largest conglomerate in the world. So they're very well invested in this. So but now seeing these things like becoming the fruition of tokenizing stocks, I mean, this is something that we obviously see coming. It's going to be interesting to see how some of this plays out, because Reggie Middleton from Veritasium was trying to create this very same concept of peer-to-peer capital markets, cutting out the middleman, cutting out your brokers and things. Now, in this aspect, I don't think it's going to be cutting out brokers. It may be in the future, but imagine this. So with precious metals, when it comes to spot ETFs for gold and silver, the big question is, do these trading institutions, these financial institutions, actually have all the gold and silver for all the paper contracts they have out there, or are they rehypothecating? So when you tokenize stocks, now let's just use since they're saying BlackRock shares, BlackRock is, one of the companies trying to get the Bitcoin spot ETF. So imagine that we have a tokenized spot Bitcoin ETF, and then everything is in a blockchain, and that's transparent. So you can actually see, because people I'm sure will demand it, one-for-one ownership of these assets. Where with gold and silver, it was a question. Maybe we can correct that in the future. But with Bitcoin and tokenizing everything, we don't have to trust. We should, in fact, be able to verify.
So much nicer, right? I mean, it's half the reason I don't trade the stock market as much as I trade crypto, because, like, you ever go to bed at night, you're about to open up a trade, and they're like, $10 billion worth of Tether just got sent to the exchange. You're like, maybe I should long, it's like, or they're like, all the Bitcoin got sent, someone's sending a bunch of Bitcoin to Coinbase. I remember how many nights, like, I was looking just at, whale alerts, and it's like, 10,000, 5,000 Bitcoin got sent, and like, we got a dump the next day. It's like, well, why is someone sending, sometimes it is wallets, you get better at watching on-chain data, but if you do it all the time, you can get a little bit of an edge, and actually you're trading too, you know what I mean? So I was like, man, why would I trade the same system of all the technical analysis without the on-chain data when I can kind of see a little bit more behind the scenes? So it always made me feel like I had, especially in a bull run and when there's a lot more volume coming in, it gave me a little bit more of an edge. And that's why I always tell people, like, also the pre-market and the aftermarket, like, not everyone realizes they don't even have access to them. Most people do, but not everyone does, and some people don't realize they're basically, once you don't have access to a market on bookending your market, you're kind of you're getting played, man. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It never felt right to me. And it's kind of why I moved into the crypto, and, I don't really trade stonks anymore.
No, I understand. And plus, the rehypothecation too,
we don't even know
the shares that are actually
did you watch
traded.
I'm pretty sure you saw it. And if you didn't, I don't want to put you on the spot, but they took a guy that worked at Goldman Sachs, put him in a room, right? Put like the shadow over him, changed his voice. And he was like, we had a dark room. He's like, there was 12 of us. He's like, it was an office space that no one even knew was there. It was like, there was a door inside of a room. He's like, and we're sitting there shorting with shares that didn't exist. They were like creating fake short shares, like shorting markets. Like, just, I don't know. I was like, I was
so much manipulation.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe it, so he admitted to it too. So, with that being said, what's the last thing you just provided so much value to my viewers. You really did. Like, I sat, and at one point, like, I was just in a daze because I was listening to you and I was like visualizing what you were saying. You were taking me on a nice journey. You know, with your background of like just basically good, you have a historical background, good finance background. What can we tell the viewers? Last bit of, few sentences while you're here, as we head into this next, 2024. Do you like to diversify? Are you into real estate, Bitcoin? Are you all in? Just kind of what's your overall picture? Obviously not financial advice, but like what's your overall picture if you were to say to, a young person coming up or even an old person trying to latch on to that last savings that they could have to try to make a change in their life?
Well, good question, man. I got involved in crypto to hedge against the dollar. I was already a proponent of things like precious metals, gold and silver, and I still am, and really encourage people to diversify when it comes to those aspects. I look at precious metals in a present tense of my way of preserving what I have. And then I look at things like cryptocurrency in a future tense that allows me to expand what I have. I really feel like recession is coming, so people need to prepare for that, which means that you probably need to have some money saved up. You probably should have some food stored up. There's a lot of uncertainty of like what's going to happen when it comes to not only the economic climate, the geopolitical climate. We've just seen another conflict that could lead us into something even worse than what it is now. And I'm trying to be careful with what I say with the algorithm.
Yeah.
And then with that being said, even here in the United States, the political climate, everything that's going on with Donald Trump, the indictments, Biden, everybody's saying he's too old to run. RFK Jr. now running as an independent and not sure like of what's going to happen with our country. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So I encourage people, if you are involved in crypto, a lot of people right now are questioning crypto. The sentiment is kind of low and aware that people are like not sure they made the right decision. And you really need to take this opportunity to concrete yourself into why you got involved in the idea of blockchain and cryptocurrency. For me personally, it was the disruption that I knew it was going to bring and hedging against the dollar because I knew what was going to happen based off of simply economics and listening to smarter people. And, it's kind of where we are. So I don't mess around with the stock markets. The real estate market is completely overblown. When we start to see a correction in the real estate market and things come back to reality, those are the times for people to invest. But usually those are the times that people can't afford to invest. And that's where someone like Richard Kiyosaki was able to capitalize, like in the time periods of 2008, scoop up all this property and stuff on the cheap because no one else was able to afford it at the time. So it's really positioning yourself to be able to,
that book still
allow
sells.
For yourself this life-changing opportunity.
He could live. He has a bunch of different, economic opportunities he created for himself. But the book itself still sells to this day, and like by word of mouth, continuously.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, it gets passed on to the next person, and it's like his kids are going to eat off that book for the rest of it. Like that book is going to create like basically, a pile of money for his family.
Now
but that's great.
If I'm not mistaken, he doesn't mess with stock markets. He doesn't mess with anything like that. He does do the real estate thing, and it's all about gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think the guy knows a little bit about what he's talking about with the direction of where we're headed, because he's been able to capitalize off of other people's misery because of the position he was able to put himself into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that takes discipline on people's parts. Maybe you need to get a part-time job so you can start sacking back some extra money. Another thing I would really encourage people, and this will be before the halving, so before March, do everything you can to dollar cost average, whatever, accumulate at least one full Bitcoin. That would be the most life-changing thing, generational life-changing thing that you can do. And there's so many things that you can do once you have that, and this whole market goes crazy. Some people are calling for $700,000-$800,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2025, 2026. Some people are calling for more. Some people are calling for some of that in the short term. So if you could scoop it up now, even at $27,000, $28,000, $26,000, comparatively 2 years worth over $500,000 just on a low end,
See, they have the average person so worried about the day-to-day that I always want to remind everyone to zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. You know what I mean? Like, when I really fully started to make some headway out of the rat race, it was because I really finally took a deep breath. And I was like, I was in debt. I didn't have everything. I was working a night shift. But I finally said, Sam, I'm going to make a 4 to 5 year plan. Like, I realized it wasn't going to happen in a few months. I wasn't going to triple up on a leverage trade. You know what I mean? I came to terms that life wasn't going to do it. Like, it was going to be a process that if I stuck to it and I stayed focused and disciplined, that slowly I would see the light, right? And thank God, like, that's when it began. It began when I finally realized it was going to take time. Because when you don't realize it takes time, you can keep blowing through money. Because you keep trying to make this double up instead of, once you just give up and realize that the DCA is the way, like, and that's how I slowly gave myself some mental clarity. And I tell everyone, like, when you finally have a savings in the bank, like 40, 50 grand, and your boss, starts giving you some nonsense or the job's not going perfect, like, you actually have a moment where, like, you know what, if I do quit my job, I have a year of savings. I could think about doing something else. And I have, you know what I mean? I don't want to go all that way, but for once in my life, like, I remember when my boss actually said something to me one day that was super rude, and I was like, and I had some Bitcoins that I bought and it had gone up, in the 2017, and I was like, you know what, like, I'm not, like, I have something to myself now. Like, I have a little bit of savings, and without Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, like, I never would have gotten that. Like, there's no way, maybe a few little penny stocks or something, but there was no way, and that's why I love Bitcoin, man.
Let me ask you this, though. With everything that you said, was there a lifestyle change that took place in that period of time for you to get to that position?
Honestly, I was always pretty frugal, but no, I mean, wore the same.
I wore the same
jeans.
People can cut corners.
I wore the same jeans. Yeah,
there's some things that people do that they don't need to do.
No, I want to put out.
Like, let's say you're a smoker.
Yep.
Quit smoking, and you probably are saving yourself $100 easy a month.
No, I was working a night shift. I was wearing the same jeans. I was buying those, like, giant bags of flour at Costco's and making pizza at my house. You know what I mean? You buy a bag of flour like that, you can make like 400 or 500 pizzas.
I believe it.
And you can eat, and that's like 50 cents a meal for you. So I always found ways. And whenever I was with my wife, I'd be like, that's more Bitcoin. Or I'd see something, there's a coupon at Costco's. That's more Bitcoin. Someone wanted to do something, or I could do something myself. I built my walkway instead of hiring someone for $5-6 grand. I built it. It took me 3 months. It hurt the heck out of my hands and my knees, but that was more Bitcoin, right? You know what I mean? So yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So there's things that people can do, even when people say there's nothing I can do.
Oh, there's always.
I'm sure that you're wasting money and time in ways that you're not thinking about, and both are valuable assets. And if you utilize your time better and don't spend money in wasteful ways, you might be surprised about the things you might be able to accomplish. It does take discipline. And it will progress into a lifestyle change. It really will, because you'll think about things differently.
Dude, I love how we just wrapped this up into a perfect yarn. Like, the value that was just delivered is amazing. Someone wanted to hear that, man. Needed to
Price
hear it.
Price is rice.
And it changed. Yeah, price is rice, man. Everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. We greatly appreciate it. We'll be back again next week for the Price Report. Rice, thank you so much, man, and you're an amazing guest.
Thank you, my friend.